Whew. All right, I think I've successfully killed all my competition. So now, let's get to the list. I remember when I saw the first Scream. I was a kid. It was a little after it came out. And I remember hearing so much about this slasher horror film that was changing the game. Back then, I didn't know a lot about movies. I only saw one or two a year in the theater, and I was still mostly renting kids' movies. But my sister, who was a little older, she rented the original Scream. And while she was off doing friend stuff, my brother and I popped in that VHS and watched it. And we liked it so much that when she came back from the friend stuff, we watched it with her again that same night. To be young again, to discover things, to discover a horror franchise in its making, and we hadn't even seen the horror films that it was riffing on. The first Scream is a stone cold classic. It set the rules for the rest of the films to break. It iterated on what worked and what didn't about horror films, and 30 years later, it's its own institution. So I've just come back from Scream 7, and we're going to rank all the Scream films, from the most frighteningly bad to the ones that are absolutely irresistible. Dead last at number 7, we have Scream 7. Yes, the latest is not the greatest. The franchise finally comes to a screeching halt, and it feels like it is absolutely run out of gas. Neve Campbell and the original screenwriter Kevin Williamson are back, but they've brought none of the freshness and inventiveness and humor that the franchise is known for. Sydney now has a teenage daughter, and she's trying to save her from the Ghostface killer, but the suspense, the kills, the thrills, and the newness are long gone. This thing is stale from minute one and has the absolute worst killer reveals of the entire franchise. Best kill, I guess the one in the school theater where Ghostface uses his knife to disembowel a poor actress hanging on wires. That's all I got. Number 6. This might be controversial as this one's been a bit reclaimed, but I gotta go with my initial reaction when I originally saw it, and it hasn't really grown in my mind years since. It's Scream 3. I guess it's this low because it has so much potential. Sydney and Gail and Dewey on the set of Stab 3. Scream finally goes Hollywood. The meta jokes write themselves. But it's a lot of characters running around in dark rooms. It retcons some stuff from the very first and really tries to make this a movie about lore, how it all interlocks and intersects with Sydney's backstory. It's just not as clever or funny as it thinks it is, and by the time we get to the reveal, which is a surprise, well, it already feels like this is the proper way to end this franchise, putting out these characters to pasture. The best kill, I guess it has to be the opening kill of Cotton, simply because it surprised the hell out of me and pissed me off for the rest of the film. 2000 Liev Schreiber was cooking. I don't know how you kill him off. At number 5, it's Scream 5, or just Scream, because apparently we don't use numbers anymore for reboots. But essentially, it was a reboot of the franchise, though it's still a sequel because it is Scream 5. This is the one that introduced the new duo of sisters played by Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega, and they do bring a fresh energy into the franchise. This one is a riff on legacy sequels, how we dig up the movies we love to excavate the franchise when we've run out of ideas, or to bring back that good old nostalgia. That's the best angle it has going for it because the kills aren't really inventive and there aren't that many kills. But the reveal is kind of fun in how it iterates and remixes things from the very original. Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox essentially cameo, but Arquette gets a good arc and his death is the most memorable. It sucks to see him go, but he does go out swinging. Smack dab in the middle at number 4 is Scream 6. I was surprised as much as anyone about this one because I wasn't too keen on Scream 5, but the reason this one works better than 5 is simple. Set pieces. This harkens back to the original trilogy and that its kills and chase scenes are set pieces. Barrera and Ortega continue their great chemistry, and Barrera shows off her badass side as a heroine who has a killer instinct she's trying to suppress. The reveal of the killer is underwhelming but also hilarious, and that the actor Dermot Mulroney goes full tilt in bad guy mode at the end. It does miss an opportunity with not leaving his killer alive. It would have been cool to see them do kind of a Hannibal Lecter trying to make money and fame of being in prison. And this is the last time we see Barrera and Ortega because Melissa Barrera actually believes in Palestinian rights, and the producers at Paramount are a bunch of fucking cowards. Best kill? I guess the last one for the bad guy where Barrera stabs Mulroney in the eye. At number 3, we have Scream 4, the most forgotten of the Scream sequels. Remember when Wes Craven returned to the franchise 11 years after the third part and gave us a meta riff on how this franchise is and will always be a Gen X showcase? Yeah, I sometimes forget it exists too, but it's a solid one and it took a few years to appreciate it. Because this movie revels in red herrings, bringing us a hot, new, young cast and thinking they're going to take over the franchise, when really they actually get picked off in funnier and funnier ways. And we defer back to the OGs. The killer reveals of this might be the most insane, but it kind of makes sense in a twisted fame reality TV culture we had at the time in 2011. Emma Roberts as the killer is really going for it as this little mini Sydney who's resentful of her aunt. And she also gets the best death in the end when Neve Campbell defibrillates her head. At number 2, it's Scream 2. We forget that this movie came out 1 year exactly from the original Scream. That's how big a hit the first Scream was, and that's how fast they made this movie. But it doesn't feel like a cash grab. It's actually a clever and funny way to continue the franchise. Sydney is now off to college, and she's again stalked by a killer. But the way this one breaks the rules of sequels, especially with the movie's best and most tragic kill of Randy, Jamie Kennedy's horror expert, which shook me to my core as a kid, it shows us that all bets are off. By the time we get to the finale, set in a college theater, and Sydney takes action against 2 killers, Laurie Metcalf in crazy mode as Billy Loomis's mother, and a super young Timothy Olyphant as the most annoying Tarantino film student you've ever seen, it's just kind of awesome. Not to mention the opening sequence, which almost rivals the first movie, with Jada Pinkett Smith in a theater for the first Stab movie, where she gets gutted on stage, and Omar Epps meeting a grisly end in a bathroom stall. Never put your ear up to a bathroom stall. If you learn anything from this movie, you learn that. And number 1, it's the original. It's Scream 1. It is a classic. It's a masterpiece of the slasher genre, and I contend that it's one of the best whodunits of all time. Because the reveal of not just how many killers there are, but who the killers are, was mind-blowing when you're a kid, and still as an act of screenwriting and filmmaking, it kind of can't be beat in the annals of horror and movie history. These are the characters we fell in love with. The vulnerable Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell. The steely Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox. The lovable doofus, Dewey, played by David Arquette. But then all the other side characters are the most memorable here in the franchise. Jamie Kennedy's Randy, the horror expert who explains the rules. Rose McGowan, who every young boy seeing her when they were a teen totally fell in love. And then there's Stu, played by Matthew Lillard, who's one of the best horror side characters we've ever seen. Him, along with Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis, are just iconic killers. And Wes Craven's direction and the set pieces and how he films the action and gets our heart racing, not just in the opening scene where he offs poor Drew Barrymore in the film's best kill, but at the end when we're really rooting for Sydney to take out her boyfriend and this absolute psycho Stu. Man, it is just a hell of a ride and it can't be beat. If we have anything from this 7-movie deep franchise, we have this original film, which will forever and always be a classic. If you like this ranking, please like and subscribe or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. I can now retire my... Wait, Chris Stuckman's still alive? Well, looks like I got some work to do. Coming for you, Stuckman.